Hello, everyone. This is Howard Fox, and welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast, where we celebrate individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, stewardship, conservation, access, and enjoyment of the outdoors. Tom Rynott is our guest today. Tom is the Communications Director for Galena Country Tourism. Tom, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. Howard, thank you for having me on, and really excited to talk Galena and kind of talk shop.
Fantastic. Now, I have to share right off the bat, I usually do a little bit longer introduction. There's a lot of debate in the podcasting realm of how long should your intros be? And I can go, I've had some long ones, but I thought,
Sure.
as I was researching the episode, I'm thinking, God, Galena, this is a cool little area, lots of history. And I don't think I can do it justice. So I'm going to, in our conversation today, kind of let you do that justice of really describing, what is Galena as a little town, and where is it located, and why should visitors who are interested in outdoor and history and just perhaps even some good food and adult beverages, maybe a coffee or two, why are they going to come to Galena? So first, again, welcome. But tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be a communications director for Galena Country Tourism.
Yeah, so as you said, my name is Tom Rynott. I was born and raised in Illinois, specifically Moline, Illinois, about 2 hours south of Galena in the Quad Cities. Went to Western Illinois University for Recreation Parks and Tourism Administration. Right after graduating, I was a director of Parks and Recreation at a small town in Illinois for several years, and then I came here. So I was in the Parks and Recreation side of things in Illinois, and now I'm in the tourism side of things in Illinois. As far as being the communications director, something I really enjoy is talking about Galena, and I think it's a skill of mine. And so whenever we get a chance to really share the story of Galena, cast a spotlight on it, I have the great privilege and honor of getting to do it. So here we are today.
Very good. How long have you been in the role?
Just over 2 years.
Just over 2 years. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And so a question I have to ask, and for our listeners, I do know the answer to this, and I will say something about it in a minute, but for all of you out there, wherever you're listening to this episode, Tom, where is Galena located, and how do you get there?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways I could describe where Galena is. So I'll hit them both. For one, Galena is in the very northwest corner of Illinois. It's really in what we might call the tri-state area of Iowa to the west, and then Illinois, and then Wisconsin to the north. When you're in Galena, it's a 10-minute drive to Iowa and the Mississippi River, and a 10-minute drive up to Wisconsin. So we're really right in that northwest corner of Illinois. Another thing I have to mention is that Galena is also located in what's referred to as the driftless area of the Midwest, which is an area with really unique geography because of its historical glaciology, and the absence of glaciology and glacial movement there has really cut out this really interesting part of the Midwest that's full of valleys and hills and river valleys, and a lot of biodiversity in a unique way compared to the rest of the Midwest. So it's a unique part of the Midwest in this driftless area, but it's also in the very northwestern corner of Illinois. It's about a 2-hour drive straight west from Chicago, about an hour and a half southwest of Madison, and about 3.5 hours northeast of Des Moines, if you will.
Okay. Now, is it solely a drive from Chicago? And for our listeners, I used to live in Chicago for half my life and never visited Galena. So shame on me. I said to Tom already, I'm sorry about that. We'll have to remedy that. Can you take a train from Chicago to Galena? Or do you have to drive?
You can't take a train. The best way to come from Chicago to Galena is by taking this old historic highway, Route 20. Which will take you directly from Chicago through Rockford, through a lot of old towns in northern Illinois, and then eventually you end up in Joe Daviess County and Galena in the northwestern corner of Illinois. But Highway 20 takes you right to Galena from Chicago.
Oh, very cool. And just given the geography and the landscape and those the term you use, glaciation?
The glaciology,
Glaciology
here,
Okay, and any town that as I have grown up, any town that is along the Mississippi has a unique history to it. Now, as you look on the map and the Mississippi, it's not there's a lot of the Mississippi is actually broken up going through this area. It's not like it's just river north to south
Yes.
wide, a mile wide, 2 miles wide. There's a lot going on in this area of the Mississippi. What makes that area and the Mississippi unique for perhaps the early settlers to this area and even for visitors today?
Yeah, well, first of all, when it comes to we're going to get into a little bit to the history of Galena and why Galena is where it is and how it came to be a
Right,
popular town. Galena is not technically on the Mississippi River. It's on a
right,
tributary of the Mississippi River called the
right.
Galena River. It used to be called the
Okay,
Lefevre River. Now it's the Galena River.
right.
The Galena River used to be about a 6-mile trip off, or what would we call that? Detour off of the Mississippi for steamboat traffic coming up and down the Mississippi.
Oh,
So it was
really?
sort of a
Okay,
rest point between St. Louis and the Twin Cities.
okay,
Really, the only large commercial hub and port that you could stop at in between what would have been a very long journey between St. Louis and the Twin Cities at that time.
okay,
So Galena being just a few miles detour, the Galena River being a few miles off of the Mississippi River, brought in a lot of steamboat traffic there. Galena is a French word meaning lead mining, essentially, or it's a term for
okay,
lead. So
okay.
there was a lot of lead mining there, pulling a lot of immigrants into the area, and then obviously the convenience and proximity to the Mississippi River and all of that steamboat traffic in the 1800s coming up and down attracted a lot of people here and led to a bit of an economic boom. And it was at around this point in the mid 19th century, mid 1800s, that Galena was actually at one point larger than Chicago in population, and a lot of people, be they public figures, be they political figures, would actually make claims like Chicago or Galena will become the next great American city. Before they were saying
Mhm,
that about Chicago, and that was simply because of the economic importance of steamboat traffic and river travel. Obviously,
mhm,
that changes as we get farther into the 1800s, and we'll talk about that. But that was really what established Galena as a very prominent town. Its proximity to the river, lead mining, and in terms of what makes this area just geographically beautiful, the Mississippi River, as we get up here, is starting to touch that driftless region we talked about. So you're
mhm.
starting to see crests and bluffs and river valleys. Just south of here, it's much more flat, you'll notice. So there's a lot of natural beauty here, and that creates a lot of opportunity economically and in terms of travel.
Okay. Now, one last question about the Mississippi, and
Yeah.
then I promise we're all Galena and the area.
Okay.
I know there was a celebration this year about I don't it was 150th, 100th anniversary of the something about the Upper Mississippi. There's a lot of the areas along the Mississippi, there's these stewardship organizations protecting the waterways and the nature and the environment. Um, was there any type of what types of activities are basically celebrating the Mississippi, its access to cities like towns like Galena, and
Mhm.
also the environment? Because your area, it has to be wonderful for not only fishing, hunting, uh, birding, I would imagine, just given the nature of how the Mississippi just breaks up in this driftless area. But is there any type of there was a celebration, I'm just wondering if you were aware, knew of that, or is that crossed your
I'm
path?
not familiar with that specific
Okay,
celebration. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I was trying to get on a steamboat that I was trying to get them, "Let me come on the steamboat. I will interview your crew and your guests, and I get to travel down the Mississippi." I'm
Yeah.
a very opportunistic podcaster, Tom.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, but
so
in terms of how we take advantage of the Mississippi, I would say a couple of things. For
yeah,
one, Chestnut Mountain Resort, which is one of the more popular experiences and destinations within our destination. It's a ski resort. You go
okay.
skiing, snowboarding during the summer. They have an alpine slide, but they
Mhm,
also offer river cruises on the Mississippi River there, which take you up and down the Mississippi. And there's a lot of interpretation and educational opportunity there. Fishing and birding are ones you mentioned; those are very popular here. Kayaking as
mhm,
well. You can rent a kayak on the Galena River and you can take it to the Mississippi River. And then we have lots of organizations within Joe Daviess County, where Galena is located, that work to preserve and really to accentuate and highlight the natural beauty of the area. JDCF, the Joe Daviess Conservation Foundation, is the first one that comes to mind, but there's many organizations and there's a lot of effort and commitment to preserving and highlighting the ways in which our river valleys here make us a place worth coming to.
okay, very good. Yeah, definitely. I'm excited. I'm gonna go back and visit my friends in Chicago and say, "By the way, come on, we're gonna go away for a couple days in Northwest.
Yeah.
So the history around Galena, I mean, you talked about the mining, obviously trade, the steamboats. How has the history of the town evolved, up to where we are now in the 2024 going into 2025? What's
Yeah.
how's the history of the town evolved?
It's a really good question, and it's kind of a unique answer. We've actually had some academic curiosity about Galena, academic institutions that are interested in population loss and how destinations evolve and so on. And Galena is a really interesting case study from what I've gathered. So for one, we kind of left this off in the mid 1800s when Galena was sort of at its boom with the steamboat traffic going up and down the river, coming into the Galena River. Lead mining was also at its peak. All of that comes apart pretty quickly in the later 1800s after the Civil
Mhm.
War. Ulysses S. Grant, who lived here for many years, has left Galena at this point. The steamboats have been primarily replaced by the railway car, by steam engines, etc. So the steamboat traffic is more or less lost on Galena. We don't have a train coming through at that time. So it's a time of major economic loss, and that's when Chicago just starts taking off from there. They supersede Galena and the rest of this part of the Midwest. So Galena, since that point, had been in a state of population decline, and it actually still is today. And what makes Galena really interesting is that it's one of the few places in the United States that has been experiencing over 100 years of negative population growth while positive economic growth. So it makes it really interesting in that sense. But frankly, this town was built in the mid 1800s. It still looks like it was. And the reason for that was by the 1970s, there wasn't much in terms of economic activity here. The population had been declining for many years. It was starting to look like many towns in the Rust Belt and in the Midwest. A lot of vacant buildings, an elephant's graveyard of what once was a bygone era. And then a lot of people started taking an interest in the history here, and historic preservation societies and associations grew. And they started to create ordinances, historic zoning downtown to preserve this old architecture. And they've done an incredible job of it. And it's one of the first things that you see if you look up, if you do a Google search on Galena, if you come here, is you notice the architecture. It's this old brick. It feels like you're being transported back in time. And that was through very deliberate preservation efforts. So that begins to happen in the 1970s. Then in the 1990s, we see lots of retail space start to come in, and Galena slowly starts to become a bit of a tourism destination. And now it's one of the largest tourism destinations in the Midwest. So yeah, it's been a really interesting history. The population is still very small. I mentioned that negative population growth. We're still technically in that, but a lot of the areas around Galena are growing. So we're optimistic about the future, but our history is really interesting.
Okay. One more self-serving question. I always joke with many of my guests. I'm always looking for my next place to live. Is Galena, in terms of affordability for a family, single person like me coming in, can you buy a home, a condo, rent an apartment in Galena? Because you've got a lot to offer from the history, the outdoor activities. I imagine the food, wine, and coffee.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, so what we see here is a lot of the new families that move in, recent transplants here. A lot of them are coming in from Chicago. They're coming in from urban centers, and the cost of living here is that, and the cost of housing is more affordable than living
okay.
in some of these large urban centers. All of this is relative, of course. If you're moving from another small part of the Midwest, you're probably going to be a little surprised by the cost of things here because it is a destination and a place that people want to come to. But a
Right.
lot of people are coming from these urban centers and are going to be pleasantly surprised by their new costs of living. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I moved from Chicago to Las Vegas, and everybody said Las Vegas is inexpensive. And then when I got here, it's like, no, it's not. It's
Yeah.
rather expensive. I am curious, too, about you mentioned the Civil War.
Yeah.
Was the Galena area affected much by the Civil War, and what are some, what are some of the unique, like, I didn't know that type of statistics about the Civil War.
Yeah, so Galena was not directly affected by the Civil War. Obviously, the Civil War didn't pull itself, the battlefields didn't pull itself this far north, but it had a lot to say and do with it indirectly in terms of Ulysses S. Grant, who was obviously the lieutenant general for the Union, and a lot of historians credit him with winning the war for the Union, and we do too here in Galena. Lived in Galena for a period of time. His father and brother operated a tannery here for many years, and he had moved here prior to the Civil War. And it's much about Ulysses S. Grant that he was at this point in life a failure in most ways, and came to Galena as sort of a desperation move. Ended up loving the place, and then he was called to war, and obviously came back a war hero. Spent his years after here as a war hero. A home was given to him and his family, and then he ran his presidential campaign from Galena. So he had interactions and meetings here with Abraham Lincoln, who helped him run his presidential campaign. And when he got the call, he was in Galena when he was notified that he became the president of the United States. So that's a really important aspect of Galena's history. It'd be remiss if I didn't talk about that. There's a lot more we could say about Grant. I don't know about you. I'm a history fanatic, and I love Ulysses S. Grant as a person, even before I moved to Galena. But we adore him here. We have a museum in his name that's managed by the state, and you'll see statues of him as you walk around downtown. But we also have to say we had 9 total Civil War generals who fought for the Union who lived in
Okay.
Galena at one point in or around the Civil War. So
Oh, wow.
that's a really unique thing, and it kind of speaks to that boom era I talked about, where Galena was really this boom town at the forefront of Western expansion. To have 9 Civil War generals in a town of 3,000 people is a pretty cool fact.
That is very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So, who are the visitors that are going to be coming to Galena? I mean, if they're coming in from Madison, the Quad Cities, Chicago, what's the demographic that you're trying to attract? And hey, come on in for a long weekend or a week. Or even a day for that matter. Who who are these folks?
Yeah. Well, in terms of where they're coming from, what we see is it's obviously primarily Chicago, but we get a lot of pull from the Twin Cities, Milwaukee, Madison, St. Louis, and Des Moines. Some other interests we see that might surprise you is we get a lot from Texas, and we see quite a bit from New York as well, the state of New York.
Really?
So yeah, that's pretty much where they're coming from. In terms of who they are, before I say anything about what our average visitor looks like, our ideal would be to have a diverse visitor profile. And we think we do have that. But from what we're able to suss out, our average visitor is about 55 years old. They're upper middle aged to middle aged. They tend to be a woman, and they tend to have some disposable income. Let's say they come from high income zip codes. So that tends to be our average visitor. But that being said, we have a highly diverse visitor profile here, and it kind of depends on the season, the event, because there's lots of different events that cater to different people throughout the year. And as I'm sure we're going to get more into, outdoor recreation is a
Mhm.
plenty that tends to be predominated by men. So it kind of depends on what type of slice of the visitor you're looking for, but generally speaking, that is the case.
Okay. Would you consider Galena a four-season destination?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And so right now we're in the leading into the new year, so it's winter. Is there snow on the ground in
There
Galena
is,
right
yeah.
now? Oh,
Yep,
that's good. That's good.
yeah.
I was talking to somebody yesterday, or interviewing somebody yesterday from Michigan, and they, oh, we have sleet. That's about it. Because I had a nice
Excellent.
snowy background. So, what are some of the highlights that visitors are going to see when they come into Galena? I mean, what are they going to see, and what are they going to do besides the museums? And are they going to walk the streets and go to restaurants and little shops? What's that experience going to be like?
At any time of the year or in a specific season?
Your choice. It's you're the tour guide.
Sure, fair enough. So when you initially come into Galena, you're going to see first of all that the city of Galena is built into this hill that's going up this sort of river valley hill here. You've got the Galena River right at the forefront of it, and then the hill with the town, and you're going to immediately be drawn to the old architecture that we talked about. It's
Right.
You're going to feel a little bit transported back in time. It's going to be old steeples, old brick, old buildings. You're really going to feel like maybe you're in the 1880s or something like that. As you then approach Main Street, you're going to be probably pleasantly surprised by the pure amount of retail space. We have over 125 independently owned businesses just on Main Street in downtown Galena. And we're talking confectionaries, we're talking breweries, wineries. One of my favorites, we have a hot sauce shop, canning companies. I mean, the list really goes on and on and on and on. So there's really an incredible amount of opportunity and retail available downtown in what looks like there should be none available. So yeah, you'll notice the landscape, and then you'll notice the architecture, and then you'll notice the opportunities to have a great experience downtown.
Okay. Now, let's now talk about the seasons. If I want, again, this is the outdoor adventure series. So I
Sure.
want myself, my peers want a little adventure in our life. If I'm going to come in this time of the year, what would be some of the highlights, assuming there's some snow on the ground?
Yeah, yeah. So we really take a lot of pride in being able to say that Galena Country is a four-season destination, because that's not a privilege that every Midwestern destination has. You know, a lot of places are pretty much shut down and ghost towns for a few months, and we have the privilege of not being forced to do that. But during the winter months, one of the biggest things here, I mentioned it earlier, but Chestnut Mountain Resort,
Mhm.
it's one of the only ski resorts in the state of Illinois. I believe it actually might be the only ski resort. There's other opportunities to ski and ski hills and so on, but as far as a resort goes, I believe it's the only one of its kind in Illinois. And you really don't feel like you're in Illinois when you're at a place like this. It's up on a mountain just south of Galena. They have 9 different ski courses. Obviously, it's an old Swiss Alpine style resort. It's really beautiful. They have restaurants, fine dining, a bar. They also offer snowboarding, obviously, and Segway tours and bike tours. And they have a Roaring Eagle zip line that you can do. So it's really incredible experience with a lot of different winter recreation. But skiing and snowboarding at Chestnut Mountain Resort is the first thing I would have to say. In terms of other opportunities during the winter, something really popular here is it's a business called Hoof It Goat Treks. And this is a family that owns a farm, about a 400-acre farm just south of Galena. And throughout the year, and it's especially popular in the winter months, they offer you the opportunity to take a trek through the mountain, a guided trek with them through a mountain with their herd of goats, which is, it may surprise you, is immensely popular here.
Okay.
Something people really like about that is just the tranquility of walking through a snowy forest with a herd of goats. And I've done it myself. It's wonderful. I wouldn't have thought it was as cool as it was, but it
Okay.
sure is. Let's see, what else should I be talking about here? Ah, I think I'm probably forgetting something here.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a tour of the website if you'll indulge us in a little bit,
Sure,
and if it comes back. But
sure.
how about the other seasons? So we have winter.
Yeah,
We're going to be we eventually get into spring, right? For folks who've never been to the Midwest, we love everything about the winter, getting up to the new year between January and say into March, April. We just we can't the spring can't come quickly enough. All right.
yeah.
So spring has arrived. What are we going to do?
Yeah, well, first of all, with spring coming and the rivers defrosting, kayaking is super popular here. So you can rent a kayak downtown Galena. You can take the Galena River all the way back to the Mississippi. You can take it almost all the way up to Wisconsin if you wanted to. As I mentioned earlier, you can also take a river cruise at Chestnut
Mhm.
Mountain Resort, which is a really cool experience. We also have a fly fishing outfitters here in Galena, which is a
Oh, really?
popular one once the spring starts for those interested in fly fishing.
Hmm.
So those are big ones. The same company just off Main Street in Galena, called Nuts Outdoors, that does the kayak and canoe rentals, will also rent you an e-bike, and you can take that e-bike all throughout the hills and mountains up here in Galena, and that's really a cool experience. Yeah, and then obviously Hoof It Goat Treks, I mentioned that's running throughout the year. So those are just a few examples of some of the things you can do.
Okay. And now we're into the summer season. What are we going to do?
Yeah, well, there's gonna be a lot of crossover between outdoor activities in the spring and the summer, so I'd end up repeating myself on a lot of those.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I would mention that during the summertime, we're gonna see a lot more events on our event calendar that are gonna have an outdoor focus. I mean, our 4th of July festival here in Galena is very popular. Obviously, that's gonna be outdoors. And then we have a lot of other events throughout the summer, a lot of live music outdoors. The Joe Daviess Conservation Foundation is pretty consistently on an almost weekly basis putting on outdoor education classes and programs. So there's a lot more in terms of programming available to you during the summer, although a lot of the recreational offerings are going to be similar from spring to summer.
Okay. I am curious, and you mentioned a lot of activities. Now, I'm a member of the Outdoor Writers Association of America. A lot of my peers and friends are into fishing, especially fly fishing. I mean, I don't know if you've ever fished before. I'm a little bit older than you are. This year, I actually fished for the first time, and I was taught how to fly fish. Okay.
You fly fish for the first time or you fished for the first time?
I did fly fishing for the first time, or
Okay.
actually, I should say, the first time I've ever been fishing, and it was fly fishing, and
So
I
both. Wow.
both. Yeah.
Wow. That's
It,
shocking to I think that'll be shocking to your audience.
well, it is, and I freely admit that. I mean, I hike, I bike,
Yeah.
I'll do kayak, assuming I can stay in the kayak and don't tip
Yeah.
over. I like birding, I like dark sky photography,
Yeah.
and the like there. But I am curious with the variety of the activities, especially in the outdoor space. As a destination, do you get larger groups of visitors coming in to visit as a destination, perhaps like a group of 30 or 40 writers want to just drop into Galena and just experience it for 3 or 4 days? And because it seems like there's a lot of opportunity to get some great content about what's going on the in Galena and in the Joe Daviess County area.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I've really been at the forefront of this, and I've seen it really pick up in the last year or so, the amount of attention and eyeballs and awareness on Galena Country. The amount of interest we've had from press groups and publications and magazines and international groups to come check out Galena so they can write about it has gone up significantly in the last year from what I've seen. So Publicity is at a really good spot right now. It's at an all-time high. We're on a monthly basis, we track earned media, and we're getting pieces from Midwest Living and Travel Magazine and the Telegraph in London and all sorts of places. It's really an incredible thing. There's really a stir with Galena around the country and world right now. But yes, a part of my job is we actually do bring in press groups, media trips. We work with the state of Illinois tourism office, and they bring in international groups from Germany, England, other places around the world, and they come here. They visit a lot of places in Illinois, but they always spend time in Galena, and then they go back to their home country and they write what their experience was, and they almost always have a really good experience. So yeah, we do get a lot of groups, we get a lot of press and media interest. That's been a part of my job, and it's something that's really been picking up in the last year. And I would say that this right here, this conversation is just more evidence of that.
Oh, definitely. And I'm going to have to introduce you to the Outdoor Writers Association of America because
We'd love to have them.
yeah, we host an event called Field Fest, which is kind of an intimate event where 30 or 40 writer or journalists will come in. We have
Sure.
an annual conference of about 300, 350, but these smaller events, as you were sharing this, I'm thinking Galena would be a perfect destination for a field fest. So I'll have to make that introduction for you.
We would love to have them. Yeah.
Excellent. So I would love to take a tour of your website if
Let's do
you'll
it.
indulge, and I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
And you're going to be the navigator. I will be the helmsman.
Okay.
I'm a Trekkie if you if you haven't figured that one out.
Yep.
Okay, let's do this. So I'm on the website.
Okay, I see that. Yeah, so welcome to visit galena.org, everybody. This is your one-stop shop for if you're interested in visiting Galena Country. So obviously we're at a homepage here. We're going to get a little bit of an introduction to Galena Country. If you've been listening to this podcast, we can bypass this part. So what I would encourage you to do, Howard, is up in your right-hand corner, you've got menu.
Okay.
Go ahead and pop that down. And now you're presented with all of the options we hope that you would want: home, things to do, events, food and drink, local wine, beer and spirits, places to stay, and plan your visit. Where I'd like to start is things to do. So we'll click on things
Okay.
to do.
Okay. Oh wow.
And obviously, you get a whole drop down of more specific interests. You should be able to just click on the things to do header, and that'll
Okay.
take you to a general page.
Okay. Parks and recreation, things to do header.
There
Okay.
you go. So yeah, right here, if you just kind of want to scroll down the page, you're going to get a rough shot, big picture look at some of the experiences that you can have in Galena. That's going to include more information on a lot of our events, shopping, which is a mainstay here, as we talked about earlier,
Okay.
museums and history, outdoor recreation. So you're going to get kind of these broad views of some of the opportunities for things to do in Galena. I'd obviously highlight all of these. Specifically, maybe we can click on outdoor activity. This is an outdoor podcast.
Okay. Wow. Look at that site.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, as we scroll down here, you're just going to see everything that we would categorize as an outdoor opportunity or experience. And you can do this for any of those categories. So really, you can use this website as a resource to put together an itinerary of whatever interests you or your group. So there you go. That's things to do. I would ask you, Howard, to go back to the top right corner. Let's click menu one more time and
Okay.
let's click on events. Let's go ahead and go to the event calendar.
All right. So let's, okay.
There you are. Awesome.
Oh,
So this is actually our most highly trafficked web page on our website. As you scroll down here, actually, if we go back to the top really quick, I'd like to give a shout out. This is a picture from our Night of the Luminaria and Living Windows event, which just happened a couple weekends ago. It's always the second Saturday in December, and all of the storefronts and window facades downtown Galena are filled with live actors and Christmas displays. And it's really one of my favorite events in Galena.
very
But
cool.
anyway, as we scroll down here, you can see a space here where you can download a list of all of the
Okay.
annual events and festivals, which can be a great visitor resource or business resource. You can
Sure.
see the event calendar here right below that, broken down into a few more specific categories. But like I said, this is the most highly trafficked landing page on our website. And this is something that visitors are really interested, not just visitors, but locals are really interested more than anything in is what's happening in Galena this weekend, what's happening on this specific day. We're planning our trip around a festival, an event, or a holiday. And Galena,
Mhm.
like we talked about, is a 4-season destination and has a 4-season event calendar. So this is one of the more, I think, significant parts of the website and tools here.
I
We
love it.
work
I love
closely
it.
with all of our stakeholders and business owners in Galena Country to keep this
Mhm.
up to date, keep the information accurate, and really facilitate the visitor to the experience.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Very
And then
good.
we can go back to the top right corner here. Really, to be brief, we could really pick any one of these. Are any of these interesting to you, Howard, if you were thinking about visiting here?
As a matter of fact, I was thinking, when is he going to talk about food and drink? Because I am passionate about
Let's
food. I'm
do
not a
food and
big
drink. Yeah,
drinker,
sure. Let's hit
but
food and drink.
I do, by the way, like a good cup of coffee. And we're not talking
Okay.
about the one that's on every street corner. And I've even seen them across the street in Chicago from
Yeah.
corner to corner. It's like, who does that? But
Well, we have
uh,
that in droves, thankfully.
okay,
So obviously, you're just going to see kind of a rundown. Some of this is going to be self-explanatory, so I'll
okay,
try not to say anything too self-explanatory here. But it's going to give you a great rundown of all of the restaurants, confectionaries, bars, anywhere you
okay,
can eat and drink and enjoy yourself here in Galena Country, of which there's a myriad of options. You asked
sure,
specifically about coffee shops. We have 3 coffee shops downtown Galena.
okay.
Multiple of them actually roast their own coffee beans
I
in-house.
love it. I love
Yeah,
it.
specifically Galena Roasters is a really popular one.
Okay.
Kaladi's, I can mention a few others, but yeah, there's you're not going to find a Starbucks in Galena. I'll tell you that, but there's plenty
I
of coffee if that makes sense.
I didn't
So
say that, but I appreciate that. So I have a
yeah,
question. I've got a question. If
yep,
you have family or friends that are coming in, you haven't seen them in a couple of years. See, I
yeah,
talk about my podcast. It's like having an a beverage with a
yeah.
friend you haven't seen in 15 years. Very conversational. Where are you going to take your friends when they come into Galena? Because you haven't seen them in 15 years.
Yeah.
Where are you going to take them?
I'll give a two-legged answer to that. For one, I'll give a downtown answer and I'll give an outside of downtown answer. For one,
Okay.
I always love taking my friends and family to Chestnut Mountain. There's a
Oh,
bar and grill inside of Chestnut with a
oh,
view looking down the mountain at the Mississippi River Valley below, and it's
okay.
beautiful at all seasons of the year. So that's my number one. And it's a great bar to hang out at and have a good time.
Okay.
My second answer would be if I'm going downtown, I'm probably taking them to the Blum Brothers Public House. The Blum Brothers own a distillery in Galena, the
Okay.
Blum Brothers Distilling Company. And
Okay.
they've, in the last year or so, opened up this draft house downtown, which has the look of an old speakeasy, very much a time period kind of piece. And they make amazing cocktails. They'll smoke your bourbon for you. So
Oh,
that's a really great place to make a really good impression and impress some of your friends and family. But
very good.
frankly, to be politically correct, you can't go wrong downtown Galena. There's a lot of bars to choose from.
I love it, and
Yeah,
that's just yeah, I have to say, Galena is now on my top 10. Where's how we're gonna move next to list. So thank you very
great.
much, Tom. I
Yeah,
appreciate this. All right, so
yeah.
I'm gonna. Anything else you want to share before we head back to just you and I chatting?
No, I would say if you want to pull up the menu tab up there one more time.
Sure.
Obviously, a lot of the rest of this is going to be self-explanatory, but if you go down here and click on Visitor's Guide in the smaller text beneath the main titles,
Right here.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep. And then
Oh,
you scroll down a little bit. So this
oh,
is
very
going to
cool.
be this is a great resource. This is a digital version of our official visitors guide, which we put out
Oh,
every year.
love
We'll
it.
be releasing a new one the next couple of weeks, but this gives you a great overview of not only the aesthetic, but all of the options inside of Galena. And if I haven't made it clear already, when we talk about Galena Country, we're not just talking about the city of Galena, we're talking about Joe Daviess County. So this is going to give you a way better feel for everything available in the county to you. And we really encourage visitors to think about their trip here, not in terms of visiting the city of Galena, but visiting Joe Daviess County, which we call Galena Country. So really
Excellent.
encourage everyone to check out that visitor's guide.
I love it, and I do love that I landed on this Four Seasons, so many
Yeah,
reasons. I think I
perfect.
just found the title of this episode is "Visit Galena, Four Seasons, So Many Reasons." That's the title of this episode.
You
So
have our permission to go ahead and use that.
all right, I
Yes,
love it.
I
I
think
love
that
it.
worked out.
Okay, so I didn't plan that, folks. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing, and it's back between you and I. You take your sip, I'm gonna take mine. Even though this is all on video, I mean, like I say, this is not totally scripted, a little scripted, but not totally.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share a little bit about Galena, Joe Daviess County. And I just very exciting. And I like shame on me. I've lived in Chicago half my life.
Yeah.
And I mean, I got to Iowa. My best friend, that's where his fiance's family was from. I think I got as far as Rockford. I've been to Madison, but how did I not even think about visiting Galena? So shame on me. And I'm gonna take care of that next time I visit
Yeah, it's
back
it's
to
really is
friends.
shameful, Howard. I'm really disappointed. But the
Yeah,
next time you think about coming here, you just shoot me an email and we'll get you set up. We'll get you some experiences. I'll put together an itinerary for you and we'll show you everything we got to offer. But anyway, I want to thank you for the time to kind of showcase what we have going on in Galena country. I think it's a place that you wouldn't expect to find in the middle of the Midwest, in the middle of Illinois, to be able to go skiing, to be able to go fly fishing, all of these things. You might think you have to travel to the Pacific Northwest or the Plains states or somewhere very far away to have some of these outdoor experiences, but they're really available here in your backyard in the Midwest, and it's in Galena. So it's really a very cool destination to work for. It's an easy product to sell, and we want all of your listeners and obviously you yourself, Howard, to come visit us and check us out. So really
definitely.
appreciate you guys having us on.
I love it. I love it. Now, before we do head out, I want to be able to share a couple of our links to our sites. But a question I
Sure.
want to ask you, and I usually ask two questions: the aha moment, and which is where we talk about your background, your expertise. And I know you chatted a little bit about the night of Galea's Night of the Luminaria and Living Windows.
Yep.
Um, as you kind of think about events like that and what the city and what you have been able to accomplish in the 2 years you've been in this role, what's another aha moment for you as you look back like, wow, I get to do this?
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of mentioned it. The Night of the Luminary, the Living Windows event, which is the second December and the second Saturday in December each year. My first time going to that a couple years ago was, like you mentioned, very much an aha moment for me.
Okay.
Of this is why you work to promote the area, because this is truly a tremendous experience for people to take in. So that was really a moment of clarity for this is why you market the destination. This is why you promote it. This is why people want to come. This is truly a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
Um, I would say another aspect of this, which I probably shouldn't talk about too much right now, but I can say that I having the opportunity to work on what will be a future film production here in Galena, which is really going to highlight a lot of the history of the area, Galena specifically, but this part of the Midwest. And being a part of that conversation has been really rejuvenating and refreshing for me, just to think about playing any small part or big part in preserving the history of this area, because the history of this area, from Ulysses S. Grant to the steamboats to Prohibition, to trains coming through here and the Civil War, and it's really rich to me, and it is my neck of the woods, so I take a lot of pride in that. But yeah, I would say Night of the Luminaria, and just what a large, significant, powerful event that is for families. And then I would say getting to be a part in whatever way I can of preserving the history here has been really gratifying for me. So
Excellent. I love it.
yeah.
Any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners, say an insight? We call it an insight to go, but maybe a quote, a book, or something that you'd want to share with our listeners.
Yeah, well, I'm going to keep hammering home on the history. I guess that's kind of my
Okay.
wheelhouse. But
Okay.
I've read a book in the last year or so called Dreams of El Dorado, And it's really about the history of Western expansion in the United States. And as I live in Galena and as I walk around Galena and as a tourist walks around Galena, you can't help but kind of overlay that history on where you are. You can see it real time. It's palpable. It's around you. You're seeing statues of Ulysses S. Grant. You're seeing the building where his father's tannery operated, and you can almost sense, almost like you're hallucinating, the steamboat coming up and down the Galena River, bringing people there, and the old lead mines. And if you're a real history buff or someone who thinks about your experiences in terms of their history, it's a place where you really feel a part of history. And Galena was really on the western frontier of the Western United States at one point in the 1800s, before there was the West, really.
Right.
This was the West. And that's a really cool thing for me to think about. It keeps me motivated and interested in this area. And probably not an area a lot of people think about outside of this area historically, but they should. So that's
I
my
love
final
it.
note.
I love it. Well, perfect,
Yeah.
Nona. I appreciate you gifting our listeners with that. Now,
Yeah.
we've had a great tour of the website, visit galena.org. Where else should we go to learn more about Galena country and also the Joe Daviess County?
Yeah. Well, obviously, in terms of online, I'm going to push you right back to visitgalena.org. Use the visitor's guide. We have our socials linked on there: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc. Check all of those out. When you actually come to Galena, we have resources here for you. We run the official visitors center at 101 Buehler Street. That's a must
Hmm.
stop when you're coming into town. And then other places I would make sure you hit, just to get a feel for the land when you come in here: the U.S. Galena History Museum and the U.S. Grant Home Historic Site. Both just a few minutes from downtown, and both are really going to kind of contextualize you. So if you do all those, you check out the website, you read the visitor's guide, you hit the visitor center, you hit the U.S. Grant Home, and then you hit the U.S. Galena History Museum, you're going to be fully contextualizing where you are and ready to go fly fishing or do whatever you're going to do.
I love it. Well, it's fantastic. Tom,
Yeah.
again, thank you for joining us. This is the day before Christmas for our
Yeah.
listeners. So I know Tom's got his Christmas tree in the background, and his family ready to celebrate,
Yep.
but appreciate you taking the time to join me today on the Outdoor Adventure Series, and really do look forward to visiting Galena. And I will definitely give you a heads up. I'm coming, and maybe I'll bring a couple of my journalist friends with me, and we'll have some fun.
Hey, please do anytime. But yeah, Merry Christmas to you, Howard. Merry Christmas to your audience, and really a pleasure to be on. So thank you so much.
Fantastic. Listen, stay
Yeah.
in the line. We're going to do a quick close, and you and I can have a final chat.
Perfect.
All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I think I have found my next favorite place that I could live after Las Vegas. I don't know when that date's going to be, but I'm always looking. Tom really introduced and myself here. I'm just like, I lived in Chicago almost 30 years, and I never got there. And I'm like, I have to take care of that. So to my friends back in Chicago, I'm coming for a visit, but we're going to do a 2-hour drive west. Listen, folks, go out to the Visit Galena website, visitgalena.org. Do check out the visitor's guide. We'll provide links back to it as well as to the social sites. As for us, you can find this episode on our webpage, outdooradventureseries.com. We're also on LinkedIn and Facebook. The whole video of this episode, along with Tom's taking us on a tour of the website, will be up on YouTube. And of course, you'll be able to listen to this episode on wherever you get your podcast from: YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. Just search for Outdoor Adventure Series. And we especially like likes, commenting, and sharing. And let us know what you thought about today's episode or any of our other episodes. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day. Again, as you listen to this episode, it'll be the new year. So really, we wish you the very best in the new year. Stay healthy, be well, take care of yourselves and your family, and we look forward to having you join us on another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Take care now.